I try to encapsulate them as I remember them exactly, and not to grow them in any way, because they all happened quite a while ago now for me. So I just have tried to crystallize them into the lessons that I got from them. The out-of-body experience I had was a single car accident where I was driving across an unfamiliar neighborhood at dusk, and to date when it was, I had a cassette deck malfunction. And so there was that bloopy noise while I was driving, and I reached over and ejected the tape and pulled out this long thread of tape. And right at that moment, there's a bang. Apparently there was a car that had been parked kind of oddly on this strange street I didn't know, and I glanced off it and ran right into a telephone pole directly at about 35 miles an hour, so something like that. And instantly, that moment, I was at the level of the street light. And this is one of my clearest memories of this, were the moths flying around the street light. And I looked down, and very much like Brother Ed's experience, there was my car crashed, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's awful, you know? And I saw this person sort of hanging out of the window of it. I could look over into people's yards, over the hedges and trees and stuff, and I saw lights coming on porches and people running out to see what had happened. I saw people congregating around. As I was realizing this was me, an ambulance came and they loaded my body up, and I was able to I was not in my body. I knew I was not in my body. And I kind of was able to sort of levitate downwards and try to communicate with people, but nobody acknowledged me at all. And they loaded my body up and drove it away. And I was never alone in this experience. I always had somebody kind of right up here over on my left shoulder. And they kind of shepherded me away into sort of this bank of gray, warm fog. And I had the third near-death experience I had when I was beaten up by the skinheads. It was different in that it wasn't as heavenly an experience at all. It was my least favorite near-death experience. If you can make such differentiations, you know? I was in a place that was kind of dark. It was wonderful. I felt safe and secure and joined by this sort of loving divine consciousness again. I had multiple persons around me. They were all loving, caring, and they were all kind of scolding me because I hadn't done things right, and this was not the way things were supposed to happen for me, and that I had things to do, and I was going to have to return. And I struggled tooth and nail against it. I had this sense of the physicality of what was going on. I could still kind of, I was still aware of these guys stomping and kicking me and stuff like that, and so on the back page somewhere. But I felt all these hands collectively sort of come up underneath me and push me until I popped through kind of a membrane. And I woke up laying on a sidewalk with an emergency medical worker over me who said, "He's back!" Die in a number of different ways when we live, right? We die from being a little kid. We die from being a teenager. We die from being middle-aged. We die when we actually physically die. But we also kind of die when our wife leaves us. Happened to me. And we lose a job that we thought we were. They gave us our identity. We die from that too. Whenever something causes us to experience profound humility, where everything we thought we were is no longer valid, that is a death experience. Playing in your game anymore. You simply are what you are. And at that moment, you become teachable. At that moment, you're open to all kinds of growth. That's when it becomes available for you. When you get out of your own way, when you don't have these preconceptions about what material life is. When that stuff is gone and you are just your authentic self, You can be like Brother Ed. That's also when you can really accept your karma. And you can start to realize, oh, I've been doing that, and that's why this has happened, and now if I do this, then maybe that will happen. Then you can reach into those boxes of time in the present moment and manipulate with your actions, with an open heart. You can make changes in your life. I had to completely die to my ego life before 3 near-death experiences sunk in, you know? I had to lose the importance of all of that stuff out there to be able to realize my authenticity. My wife's uncle, my uncle by marriage, the late philosopher and archetypal psychologist James Hillman, wrote a great book called Suicide and the Soul, where he said, without a dying to the world of the old order, there is no place for renewal, because it's illusory to hope that growth is but an additive process requiring neither sacrifice nor death. The soul favors the death experience to usher in change. Just don't do it. Avoid having 3 near-death experiences if you can, you know. So what they did inform me of was that in any life that I'm in, you know, we step from lives to life. You can die instantly without even knowing it's going to happen, and it's a continuum. So it's just like stepping from one room into another room. And there, the same qualities exist in very profound ways. So the gifts of the 3 experiences, in my first one, I call it the gift of perspective. Because if you can just imagine the genie out of the bottle about being liberated from your body, and probably a number of you here have been. That's a nice thing about speaking at near-death things, is a lot of people share these experiences. If we are diaphanous, effervescent, light energy beings that have taken up occupation of these sort of awkward, sometimes graceful, sometimes kind of awkward vehicles, then you can imagine all of us right now lifting up towards the ceiling and looking down on our bodies and seeing that we are these vehicles of life that have these certain needs and a certain nature. And that kind of perspective, where you're shown objectively, I was shown objectively how to witness this phenomenon of human life, human beings, and the occupation of people by the Spirit. Everybody is subject to these sensory apparatus that we have as humans, the reality of being here on the earth and having to deal with these feelings and these challenges and stuff. And I'm able now, kind of whenever I want to, if necessary, to lovingly detach and assume this position of compassionate neutrality, so to speak, where I can see how people are having to go about what they have to go about without having to be a big part of it, without having to really own it anymore. We're formed in our lives by the expression of consciousness that comes through us in any given situation, and by this package of information that we seem to all carry that determines where we are in life, how we're going to die, how we're going to reincarnate. The Easterners call it karma, right? So we all know how challenging life is. We all know how difficult it is. And that can be the grounding of our understanding of one another. If we adopt spiritual perspective, we can have that kind of compassion for one another, where we see that everybody wants to be understood, everybody wants to be loved, everybody wants to be helped, or we're all called upon to help one another. The second gift, the gift of presence that I received in my life review, was this fact that we always are living in this moment. right now, right? When I think back on when I was a kid to this very moment right now, the experience of this moment is not really any different. I haven't changed at that level. At all these other levels, unfortunately, I've changed a great deal, you know. But so the presence that we can bring to bear in any given moment is the most important lesson that I got out of this. That being able to focus on this instant where things are happening is the only way that we can really change things, or that we can really involve ourselves in a constructive way, or the way that we can kind of take apart the puzzle that our life presents us with. So the lesson is always to be present as much as possible with an open heart, and to engage in one another. You know, you really listen to one another. You really pay attention to one another, because miracles are happening all the time. Synchronicity is a real thing, you know. And at any given moment, you might be missing a miracle. And so being present in that sense that these are sort of boxes of time that we can manipulate in with our emotions and our actions, it becomes a very useful tool to being able to kind of direct our spiritual evolution, as it were. So, perspective, presence, and then the last gift is the gift of purpose, where I was forced back into life because I had something to do. Ostensibly, this is a little bit of what I had to do. I have a second book that's going to be coming out pretty soon, and 6 years ago, I had no idea I was going to be doing any of this stuff. So it may not seem like a lot to us what we're called on to do. Not everybody can be a movie star or somebody famous. But what we are trying to realize is who we authentically are in this world. Sometimes it presents itself to us as responsibilities that we have that we may not want to take part in even, but we're called upon. Another way that our purpose is shown to us is, what do people want you to do? Do they want you to bring your guitar, you know? Have you always needed to draw as an expression of your life? For me, that was the case. And so every life is constructed in this way that has a sacred mission attached to it that only you can fulfill. And it's because we carry around this package of information that we are, that it informs what life has to give us. So that if you have this understanding of yourself as a spirit occupying the body, you have this presence in the moment where you're engaged in the moment, in each eternal moment. This is always the same moment. Then whatever you're called on for, you have to be here for somebody, you have an opportunity to be of service, you have a calling for a special talent that you have. Life is happening for you. It's not happening to you. It's always being shown to you in this way. Realizing it when I had an opportunity that had passed me by, and as other people have testified to, I was kind of entered into it. I got this sense that I would have been able to reach in and manipulate this data inside of this three-dimensional experience had I had the presence to do so. But I didn't. And there were about 5 or 6 different episodes. I don't remember perfectly. I remember some of them a little bit, but for me, the lessons have become the most important part of it. I suggest these 3 bridges. I call them 3 tips for happiness. They are radical kindness. These will engage you into your spiritual life now. You can walk out the door, and I challenge you to try this. Be as absolutely kind to everybody as you possibly can be without being corny or acting like a boob. Don't participate in gossip and stuff like that, but be sincerely kind to people and watch what happens. It happens in gatherings like this all the time because there are so many splendid spirits here that we all create this fabric together. And there is a fabric of kindness in the world all the time that you'll discover when you try. It'll be a spiritually transformative experience, being kind, I promise you. Radical forgiveness simply means that we don't allow people to define us with their own trauma, with their own injury. Lots of times, people are expressing their own package of their needs and their psychic energies through themselves, and you just happen to be there. They're not doing something terrible to you. They're just trying to get even with their own karma, and you're there for it. So we recognize that everybody is struggling with this form. Radical surrender, then, just means giving up to the winning side. Right? The people who work the hardest to try to control things are the people who suffer the most. The nature of this world is that those are the people who are in charge of most things because they need to be in charge. And so our challenge as spiritual beings is to allow them to have to go through all of that and to be here to kind of hold the whole thing together while they're going through their growing stages.